You ever go to LinkedIn or go to a conference and see somebody else who's just nailing it with their content marketing? And I'm always curious, how are they doing it? What does it look like behind the scenes? So in this podcast, that's what we're gonna explore. I'm gonna ask dumb questions of smart people to figure out how content marketing is working these days and how you and I can take away actionable steps for our businesses. Welcome to the podcast.
Ben Wise, I am the founder of Storied.
It's easy to write off social media and be like, okay, yeah, it doesn't work.
Adapt it to who you are.
Greg, welcome to the show.
Hey, Justin, thanks for being here.
So when we first met, I was really impressed at your background of all of the, you kind of had a sales background, but you really moved into kind of a content background. And you've kind of got a mix of both. You were at Cast Magic and now you're with your new company. And you use content on LinkedIn to get the results you wanted. Can you tell me a little bit about that origin story of how you ended up on this journey, like where content you realized was a differentiator for yourself?
So my background's in marketing. Actually, it was in ad sales, right? So content has always been king in that regards. It was always a matter of like your content and whatever ads I was selling for whatever platform I was focused on, right? But you learned really quickly, especially in some of the companies I worked with, that if you're buying the inventory per se, you're renting it on Facebook. So at one point I was the largest publisher on Facebook, 5 billion views. Facebook changed the algorithm. We were down to 1 billion views. And it's like, oh, wow, there goes not only your content play, but also the value that you had. And so I came to realize through two instances like that your content should be everywhere. And if you are pigeonholing your stuff into just one place, so I work in podcasting, I'm now head of relationships for RSS.com, which is a podcast platform. I coach my podcasters all the time going like, look, don't just get the downloads, focus on what you have to say. No different than our conversation we have here. It's like, great, you can't get everyone to listen to you for the 20, 30, 40 minutes, whatever your show is, but know that the little segments that come out, you can clip those, turn those into other pieces of content, post in places, turn into LinkedIn, turn into a social post, turn into a newsletter. Like there's just so much value there. And so it is from my marketing and ad sales background that took me into this podcast space that I'm now able to see the value of all of this.
Yeah. And you know, I was thinking sales, I think when I introduced you, which my bad, marketing, but because I remember.
No, background's in sales,
but it was the relationship side of marketing that's why I think I was thinking that, because you're really focused on the one-on-one relationships through content. You have this interesting take on it that you still use today. And I want to hear a little bit about that and how that's served you and how that shows up today in what you do.
So I believe life is about time and relationships. You have no clue where one conversation is going to take you. Case in point, an introduction that we got from a mutual contact. Now that we speak, I'm now on your show, and where this blossoms from is the joys of a conversation. And so for me, it's not a matter of how do I get 100,000 followers and how do I get this massive audience? How do I have this massive growth? It goes back to the mindset of how podcasters, I'm like, stop chasing the downloads. Unless that is your business. Unless your business is a media and you are a media company, well, then of course, from a media standpoint, you want the downloads. But like for me, it is ultimately, how do I have these one-on-one conversations? The niches are in those riches of a conversation as opposed to, I have thousands and thousands of people, I have all this engagement, but like, I want to know who these people are. I want to be able to interact with them. I want to be able to have the time to do that. And if we look at it from a content standpoint, taking it back on the lens of podcasters, we're speaking into a void right now. You and I are like, who's listening to this? You can go look at your analytics and go like, all right, I got X amount of downloads. But at the end of the day, who are those people? So for me, it's always been, how do I help educate people on take your content, repurpose it, but use that so you can engage in conversations, so that you can actually have that one-on-one time with the right people that you want to be to talking with.
Yeah. And it's perfectly aligned with my philosophy, which is why when we spoke, I was like, we do have to have continue this conversation. When I talk about the sawdust method, or I talk about the content buddy system, which is basically content as you go from your conversations, your one-on-one conversations, turn those into content, or make time with a buddy. That's the content buddy system, to have these conversations. And guess what? It's a 2-for-1. I always say you build a relationship with that person and you create content from it. Another method, and this is one I think you're talking about, is, what if you turned your podcast, if you're doing a podcast, into a one-on-one relationship deepening tool. And then, by the way, you get content from that. So it's a great 2 or 3 for 1. But yeah, I think to your point, there's a lot of people who are outside of content and they don't necessarily realize that the point of content isn't the views, although that is helpful. It's the relationships you build along the way. It's like that saying, right? It's not maybe the real friends we made were the conversations we had along the way or something like that.
I mean, for what your business is, I mean, this is also why we talk and we get along, because I'm a firm believer in what you do, because I believe every person should have a podcast. In your case, every person should be talking to you, have that video, record it so that you can build that thought leadership. So you can build that content engine. For me on the podcasting side, it's like, great, I can have this conversation, bring on the right guest, help your guest then promote you. And then you've got all this other piece of content that you're able to leverage throughout whatever that journey is. And then know a person doesn't have to listen. Trying to put a person into a box. And I always go back to my school days. Like, I was a kid that had to show up in class, even if I slept during it, to absorb whatever it was, right? Some people are like, I don't need to go to class. I'll read the book and I'm good. I'm like, it's just not the way. So if we remember that people learn, access content, and access the information in all different ways, then you start thinking about, I don't want to just be a video. I don't want to just be an audio. I want to be a way that I can engage with an audience where the audience wants me to be, and then be able to speak with them in the way that they want. And that's the fun part about refining your message and the content play. It's like what you posted 3 months ago, you can go ahead and repost it today, knowing very well that even if it's the same message, you don't know who saw it 3 months ago, who's going to see today. And the person that sees it today that saw it 3 months ago, they're not like, Justin, you've already done this post. It's like, no, it's just, you got to hammer that home. Like, what do they say in content? When you're tired of talking about it, that's when you've got to talk about it more, right? And that's what I love about it.
That's a good one. I came across that. I've been doing this for 2 years. I came across that recently. It was like, even because I help my clients do this all the time, but I experienced it where I was like, man, I feel like I'm a squeaky wheel here. And I wrote about it and I got all this feedback in the comments like, yeah, you're doing it right. You're on the right path. It's funny because I do with clients, but doing it for myself as a content agency, it was funny experiencing it. Probably one of the major times I remember. So I want to go into you said something interesting. Everyone should have a podcast. I can just hear some people go, no way. That can't be true. We kind of know why. The idea is like, it's a wonderful 2 for 1, 3 for 1, 4 for 1. A mentor taught me years ago, the older you get, the less time you have. So you have to leverage your time to figure out where are the 2 for 1s, where are the 3 for 1s. We kind of already talked about that, right? It's you're building a relationship, you're creating content, and maybe you're leveraging it even in the DMs. Like there's so many uses for content that I'm finding all the time. Like, oh, wow, this is a great icebreaker for this new relationship, right? There's all sorts of ways you can leverage content once you have it. But I want to go back to this question. Everyone should have a podcast. What is a simple system, or do you have a simple system you recommend for somebody when they want to start out with a podcast? Like, what would you recommend to folks if they're just getting started?
Yeah. So strategy is the biggest thing. So in content, not just podcasting, you get overwhelmed, right? Like it is, hold on, I have to think about what I'm posting. And it's the thought of every day I've got to post. Well, what do I think about every day? So you start thinking of, how do I systemize that? How do I come up with a schedule? Once you start having that strategy, it becomes a lot easier. But from every person should have a podcast, I'll preface, every person should have a podcast if there's a business reason tied to it. And business reason doesn't mean what most people think is, oh, great, I'm going to go get sponsors or I want to get ads. That's the quote unquote normal business reason for it, because they're thinking, I'm growing an audience and someone's going to pay me to reach this audience. It's like, no, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about you have a business reason, and the business reason, the ROI, once again, sales, right? So it's ROI is tied to what's your purpose. So is it I'm a real estate agent and I have a podcast because I'm bringing on guests that could be potential homeowners that I'll be working with in the future. And then I'm just helping elevate them. They're then telling their friends and family about, hey, I had this great show. I went on, met Justin, and all these conversations. Like, you are truly using it as a relationship builder. Have that one-on-one relationship like you and I are having now. Bring the person on, and the ROI goes back to my philosophy. Life is about time and relationships. It is not about the quick win. I need this sold today, or I need this solution today, or I need to be a thought leader on stages today. The content play and content marketing is a long-term piece. It is not, how do I create this content and then automatically leads are going to come to me tomorrow. You haven't built any know, like, and trust. So yeah, you could go about that and try and get the leads quickly, but like, it all comes in that long tail and playing that. And so if everyone has a podcast, 52 weeks, if you're recording a conversation with someone and each person you bring on is a potential prospect or an existing customer, now you're able to build that relationship with your existing customer, case studies, or new prospect and build a relationship there where you can ultimately close business, or all those 52 people are helping you promote you to their network, which is building a know, like, and trust in a way that you can't do elsewhere. And then we go into the whole content repurposing play. It's like, I'm getting all these great little nuggets. And for me, it's always a matter of not what, in this case, it's not what Justin said. And then that becomes very egocentric. Like, I said this, which is in some regards, you need to do that because you need to be a thought leader. But it's like, hey, this is what Greg or my guest said on my show. And that resonates more with an audience. And so now you're using someone else's words that came on your show that resonates with the message you want to elevate. So it goes back to like why everyone should have a podcast. If you have a business reason, there's no better way to do that. And then have that content engine that is like, you know what? I don't know what I'm going to post about today. Well, let's go back into the vault of 3 months ago. Like, what were the little nuggets that I can go ahead and pull out there and say, great. So like, there's so much value into what you do as an agency and just the whole content play that, like, if you want to build a brand, if you want to get on stage, you want to get leads, like whatever your ROI is, there's nothing better than this.
Any tips for like building a system out? You know, is it as simple as get on, schedule an hour, and you both have, talk about things in business? Anything you've seen that's effective for a simple system, so to speak?
Know what you want to talk about. If I go back to like what my mentors told me, it's like, what are the 5 things that you want to be known about that you could talk about? And most likely those are very tied together. My 5 things is podcasting, content repurposing, relationships, mental health, and resilience. Now, those last 2, it's like not business, but that's me. That is my story. So I want people to know, like, and trust me because like that is very much who I am. I'm not just business. I'm not just Greg in a certain shirt and tie. Though if you're listening to this, I'm not in a shirt and tie. It's like totally not me. But like, I would say start with a system. And I think that's what helped me most. Once I figured out my LinkedIn, because most of my content's on LinkedIn. So once I realized what is the system, well, every Monday is 3 podcasts I think people should listen to. Great. I now know every Monday I'm already doing the homework. I'm already listening to podcasts. So those are things that I want to be talking about. It's elevating others. Tuesdays, how do I give back to people? Those are always looking for things that are like, people are hiring, people are open to work. How do I give back? What's the point of having a network if I can't support them, give back to them and elevate them, right? And so then it's the next 3 days, like, what are the other 3 things that I want to talk about? And it's just figuring those pieces out. So back to what you do or anyone that's listening, it's like, what do you want to know? What do you want to be known for? What do you want to elevate? And how do you start dividing those into little content pillars that you can say, Monday's this, Tuesday's this. Now you've got a schedule in your mind. You're like, what am I posting? Well, it's Wednesday. I know I have like Reward Wednesday or whatever it is you want to do. And then know that you have the liberty of something may have come up. And I'm like, I know it's Wednesday, but I've got a great idea that I want to get out there. Great, then get it out there. No one's saying you can't, but like, that's a nice thing is you can always do the audible.
Yeah. It's interesting to talk about content pillars. I personally am I'm not an organized content pillar kind of a guy. There's themes in my mind running around, but I've always just talked about what's on my mind as long as there's a target I'm hitting, where you might say, oh, content pillars are 3 little targets. My philosophy towards content pillars is you got one big target. And as long as you're hitting that target repeatedly, it's about video, it's about this and that, you're good. And I don't have that organization you do with my content. Like, I could not tell you what's going out next week. I've also scheduled things out ahead of time. But as long as you're all hitting this big target, that's what I care about And it's always fascinating me hearing talking to people who are more organized around their content pillars. And I think probably the reason I don't do the content pillars, and it's like I talk about the analogy, the smaller targets, instead of having 5 smaller targets, I aim for one big one, is because I think sometimes I've seen it a lot with clients. It can be a real hang up. I've talked to clients, or prospects, I should say, and they say, "Oh yeah, I've got to figure out my strategy," which is keyword for I don't know what I'm going to talk about. Right. And so okay, well, that's fine. But you don't necessarily, we can draw that out of you, right? My business is built around like an interview method where our job is to draw out of you what you're going to talk about. And then you check in with people. Hey, what, 3 months, 6 months? Oh, we got to figure out what we're going to talk about. And then people never actually get to it because it in many ways, it is one more barrier to getting the thing done. And I've always told prospects and even our clients, you know what? We're going to aim for this really big target that is your subject matter expertise. Every so often, we'll drop in a story that's related or maybe unrelated. Maybe it's a philosophy you have. Maybe it's something you learned about business. 20% personal story, so to speak. But 80% of this is going to be one big old target. And then we'll adapt over time. We'll let the content give us feedback. Let people give us feedback. And then maybe there's some untapped opportunity. Maybe you had a post over here that you never would have talked about that goes big, and maybe that means we need to talk about that more. So I don't know. But that's my take on content pillars. I don't know what you think about them.
I love this story because it's so true. People get hung up. I've always wanted a podcast, or always wanted to be a thought leader. I've always wanted to do this, but like we never do it, right? What's the saying? The best time to start was yesterday. The second best time is start today. So you're never behind. You just have to start and stop overthinking. So my biggest hang up is the strategy. Like no one comes into it with a strategy. They're like, I'm just going to start recording. And then I'm like, but why? Like you want to get these stories out there, but what are we doing it for? And so if they don't know that, they use a person like yourself going like, great, you need to be doing this. I'm here to guide you on why we're doing this. And I'm going to get those pieces out of you. Being able to, once again, throw an audible and going like, I know my tenants. If we go back to your example of like, I'm not sure what I'm going to talk about. I'm like, how do you not know what you want to talk about? Like, what do you want? What is your business? What do you want to be known for? That is what. And if you don't know the answer to that, great. Let's sit down and we'll just talk and we'll flush it out. And then you realize, I don't like that. Great. Once you start realizing that what you do and you don't like, that's okay. But also it's part of your job, I'm guessing, is push them into discomfort of going like, actually, that is what we want to be talking about. And I guess the other piece is if we go back to like the downloads component that I talked about, is like, it doesn't have to be perfect. Like my content, not good. I know it's not good. If I compare it to content marketers, like at the core, I'm not a content marketer. I'm just a person who's moved into discomfort of realizing if I post consistently, and that is a big piece. Podcasting, no one's recording consistently. Therefore, it's really easy to be successful in podcasting if you just did it, and no different than taking your thought leadership. If you consistently post, if you consistently put out a newsletter, if you are consistent in life, you see the riches, you see the gold comes in there. Once again, life is about time and relationships. So it doesn't have to be perfect. You just have to do it. You just have to be out there, and services like yours allow people to go like, you know what? I just want to talk to Justin, make it look good, and then give me the content that I can get. And that I think is what more people need to be doing.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really, really smart subject matter experts out there. Maybe people that are humble, so humble they don't want to call themselves experts, but they are for all intents and purposes. And that's why I started this, was because of that reason. That people, they get hung up and we overthink, right? It's like you can't read the label from inside the bottle kind of a deal. Happens with me too, where I try to sometimes talk about certain things in my business. Or, what often happens is I don't talk about certain things in my business that I should be, but because I have blinders on, I have, this is what I think, this is what's important. So I learned to bring people from like Lydia, my writer, and she's now my new producer. She meets with me every month, and she does what I do for clients, where she interviews me. She asks me questions. I'm like, man, I never thought about that, but that's a really good question, right? That's why I'm a big fan of your method, where you emphasize the relationships. There's so much good stuff that happens when you meet with people and just talk about your business, even if it's not recorded. Even networking calls. I'm sure you've run into this, where you're having this networking call and somebody asks you a question. You're like, man, I've never thought about that, but here's kind of what I think about it. And it moves your own thinking forward. So That's my takeaway is, it doesn't matter really what your efforts are. If you are putting effort into having conversations, that's where the rubber hits the road when it comes to getting success with a B2B business. It's all about the one-on-one relationships. Yeah, the content matters, but I would argue it's almost, not quite, but almost like a side effect of the relationships you're building. And it's kind of a flip of how we think about social media, right? It's like all this one to many, and then every so often you have a one to one. But if you start with the one to ones, relationships, like you're saying, you can do so much more with it. You can leverage that for content.
I'll bring in the norm of the day, AI, right? Like I'm a firm believer that will not be able to replace us and relationships. I know there's services that are out there that match people. AI does all that stuff. Like nothing will take away me as a relationship broker and being able to go, I have one-on-one conversations with people. I build a relationship. They know I can trust. And that's why I'm able to create connections where connections are seen fit. It's not looking at data. It's no data is going to be going like, Justin, I don't think you're going to like this guy. I'm going to know like, Justin, I think I have someone for you, but knowing who you are, knowing them, I'm like, it's just going to be oil and water, right? Like that is where the conversations, that's where and so if you just have those relationships, if you have those conversations, if you record them, or I love what you were saying is like, sometimes a prospect asks you a question, like, I don't know. Write that question down. That becomes your content going like, I don't know the answer to this, or I do know the answer after I figured it out. Like those are all your content pieces that build the know, like, and trust. And that's really what we're trying to do.
Well, on that note, Greg, thank you for being here. We're going to wrap it up there. Where can people learn more about what you're up to?
I live on LinkedIn, right? So I don't have a podcast of my own, but LinkedIn is where I live. It's where I post. Or if you're looking at a podcast, there you go. I'm your guy.
RSS.com, right?
Yep.
RSS.com, folks. And he's got some cool tools he talks about too. We talked about, and we didn't have a chance today to talk about it, but things you built with used at Cast Magic, and how you actually nuts and bolts get the content out of the conversation and out into the wild. There's a lot of cool things out there, and you can speak to that. And so, folks, if you're interested in like, oh, I've got ideas and I just don't know how to do all the logistical getting this out into the wild, Greg might have a good answer for you with some of the tools he uses. And all right, Greg. Well, thank you again for being here.
Justin, it's a pleasure. Thank you.